Alright, welcome back, boys and girls. Here we go again. But before we get into egg number 2, Kimmy has a joke for you.
What is the Easter Bunny's favorite sport?
Easter Bunny's favorite sport. Track and field?
No,
Oh.
basketball.
Oh, basketball. For Easter baskets. Okay.
Yep,
Good one.
thanks.
Alright, so remember egg number 1? What was in egg number 1, boys and girls?
Donkey!
Did you say donkey? Alright, remember that Jesus rode into town on a donkey. So you see what's in egg number 2?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see what's in egg number 2. Gimme.
30 cents.
Alright, we got 3 dimes there. 30 cents. So what's the scripture passage for us today?
Matthew 26:14 through 16.
Matthew 26, 14 through 16. Okay, here we go. Then one of the 12, called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, "What are you willing to give me if I deliver him to you?" Him meaning Jesus. And they counted out to him 30 pieces of silver, so that from that time he sought opportunity to betray him, or Jesus. So Judas was one of Jesus' 12 disciples there, and we don't know a whole lot about him, but he was in charge of the money. And so he seemed to like money, and I think the Bible has evidence that he probably stole money out of the treasury that the disciples had for themselves there. But so anyways, everybody knew that the chief priests and scribes, they are out to get Jesus and stuff. So Judas thinks of a way that he can make some money. So he says, well, he makes a deal with the chief priests there. How much you gonna give me if I deliver Jesus to you? And they gave him 30 pieces of silver. And so that's kind of what the 30 cents mean. That kind of gives us the idea, illustrates that Judas betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. Alright, so let's kind of read ahead in the story here a little ways. Here we go. Sorry. So they're at Passover, which is a meal that the Jews celebrate every year around this time of the year, and it reminds them of the Passover back in the time of Exodus when God led the Israelites out of Egypt. You remember that story where they had to sacrifice this lamb and put the blood on the doorposts and everything. So the Jews have this special meal, and each part, various food that's there, it all has a meaning that ties back to the story of Exodus and the Passover there. So that's where Jesus and the disciples are at here. And then all of a sudden while they were eating, Jesus says to the disciples, "One of you will betray me," in verse 21. And they were exceedingly sorrowful. And each of them began to say to them, "Is it I? Is it I? Is it I, Lord? Is it me?" So you can imagine that's kind of going around the table there. Jesus said, "He who dipped his hand with me in the dish will betray me. The Son of Man indeed goes just as it is written of him, but woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been good for that man if he had not been born." Wow, that's a pretty hard thing to say. Then Judas, who was betraying him, answered and said, "Rabbi, is it I?" He said to him. "You have said it." So Jesus knows exactly what's going on here. We know that Jesus knows everything. He's omniscient. It means he's all-knowing. So he knows that this is going on. This is the plan behind him. So if we read ahead a little further, so Jesus while he was still speaking, behold, Judas. So now they're out in the Garden of Gethsemane at this time. Judas, one of the 12, with a great multitude with swords and clubs. So he has a bunch of Roman soldiers with him. Came from the chief priests and elders of the people. Now his betrayer had given them a sign, saying, whomever I kiss, he is the one. Seize him. All right. So back in that day, it was customary for people to greet one another with a kiss on each side of the cheek. All right. So this is not a kiss on the lips. So don't worry about that. So, and it's still practiced today. You see people in Europe or other parts of the world have this kind of greeting too. So Judas goes up, says, greeting, Rabbi, and kissed him. But Jesus said to him, friend, why have you come? And they came and laid hands on Jesus and took him. All right, so Judas carried through with it. Sorry. And so he betrayed Jesus, had him arrested. This is a really sad ending too. Oh, if we read ahead even further, so then, this is in chapter 27, verse 3, then Judas, his betrayer, seeing that he had been condemned, was remorseful and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders, and saying, I have sinned by betraying innocent blood. And they said, what is that to us? You see to it. And then he threw down the pieces of silver in the temple and departed. Then he went out and hung himself. So that's a very sad story, Judas. And this also too was a fulfillment of Scripture. The Old Testament prophesied parts of this way, again, hundreds of years ago, just like it prophesied about the donkey. It prophesies about the 30 pieces of silver. And I can't remember where that was at. I meant to look that up before. Oh, Zechariah 11, that's right. Zechariah 11:13. Let's just look at this verse real quick. Actually, verse 12, then I said to them, if it is agreeable to you, give me my wages, and if not, refrain. So they weighed out for my wages 30 pieces of silver. And the Lord said to me, throw it to the potter, that princely prince they set on me. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and threw them into the house of the Lord for the potter. So, again, another part of the story of Christ's events, the events that leading up to his crucifixion that were prophesied in the Old Testament that were fulfilled here in the New Testament. So the first egg was the donkey, so that Jesus rode into Jerusalem on the colt, and then the second one is the 30 pieces of silver that was given to Judas for betraying Jesus, handing him over to the Roman authorities. And that takes care of number 2.